Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel, welcome to a new real-life car review of a not so new car anymore. Sounds a little bit harsh, but I don't mean it that way. The Mazda CX-30 has been on sale for 6 years now, but unlike many other car manufacturers, Mazda works with model year updates. So every year the Mazda engineers get their fine comb out and sift through all the fine details of a car and make improvements where necessary. This year it's a lot about interior technology. They introduced a couple of new trim levels, which are the Homura, Takumi and this one, the Nagisa. But for this year there's also big news, literally big news, in the form of a new base engine, a 2.5 liter 4-cylinder naturally aspirated one. I've tested that engine before in the Mazda 3 and it really surprised me how well it is. I even preferred it over the very advanced Mazda SkyActiv-G engine. But the CX-30 is kind of a different car. Yes, it is based on the Mazda 3, but it is different. So in this real-life car review I want to find out how this engine works in the CX-30. And as per usual, I want to start off by having a peek under the hood. Alrighty, that's the hood up. There are no gas struts and we have a traditional hood prop. So there it is, the new base engine, 2.5 liter 4-cylinder. We know this engine from the Mazda 6 over here in Europe, where it produced 194 horsepower. For this car it's been detuned to 140 horsepower and it makes 238 Newton meters of torque. And you compare that to the other engine option, the top engine option, the SkyActiv-G engine, that makes 186 horsepower and 240 Newton meters. Now what's especially noteworthy is that there is only 2 Newton meters of difference in torque, and yeah, that's really what matters for normal driving a car. When I tested this engine in the Mazda 3, I mentioned that it appeared to make much more horsepower than the 140 that's shown in the brochure, and I have the same impression, the same experience with this engine in this car. I'm willing to bet it makes around 150-160 horsepower. This engine has electric cam phaser on the intake and a hydraulic cam phaser on the exhaust. It has cylinder deactivation, so in light operating mode it deactivates 2 cylinders, and it does that by opening a valve in the hydraulic lash adjuster. So when the cam pushes down on the rocker, it doesn't push down the valve, but it pushes down the lash adjuster. There's one thing really important to know about that the small holes and orifices in those lash adjusters are really sensitive to buildup of varnish and dirt. So for this engine it's super important to do your oil changes in time. And another thing that you have to keep in mind is that it has direct injection. There is no port injection on this engine, so there's always a risk, or it's actually a guarantee, that you will get carbon buildup, and that's especially the case when you do a lot of short distance driving. For that, yeah, it's really important to have your car during maintenance checked for carbon buildup, otherwise it can lead to a little bit of problems, but your Mazda dealer knows that and knows how to treat that. In this car it's a mild hybrid. There's an integrated starter generator over here. I believe it's a 48 volt system, and it's mated in this car to a 6-speed automatic transmission, which is a traditional transmission in the sense that it has a torque converter and 6 gears. Well, you also have German manufacturers who work with 8 or 9 gears, but I think the 6-gear layout and the gear ratios really match this engine well. I always have a look around in the engine bay and it's a bit cluttered. There's a lot of visible lines. So Mazda hasn't spent a lot of effort in masking up and making this entirely neat, but yeah, knowing the reliability of Mazda engine, this is not something that you'll see on a regular basis, nor only if you're a Mazda mechanic. So that's the important thing to know about this engine. Let's close up the hood and let's have a quick peek in the cargo space. The odd thing in my mind is that I always thought of the CX-30 as being a slightly smaller car than the CX-5, but when you look at the interior space, especially the rear passenger space, it's a much smaller car. But when you look at the cargo space, it does a real good job actually. Now I don't know the capacity in this configuration, I will look it up and blink it in screen, but with everything folded down you get up to almost 1400 liters of cargo capacity. It has a single piece partial shelf. I do like these roll-up thingies much more, but it's a large thing, it's a little bit flimsy, but well, we'll put that away. The cargo floor is nice and level with the opening, so it's very easy to get your shopping crates in and out, and this folds up so you have easy access to a little compartment over here. I believe it's 8 or 10 liters, it really isn't much, but this is where you can store things that you don't need on the regular. The rear seats fold down in a 60-40 split. There's a little push button over here, and then it falls down flat, and now we have almost 1400 liters of cargo capacity. So yeah, it's a real usable cargo space, and the nice thing is, and this is typical for Mazda, that they finish off their interiors really well and they didn't forget the cargo space. You don't see any bare metal or any visible screws. LED light in here. Yeah, there is this sloping section over here that eats away a little bit of the practicality, but overall for your shopping on the regular, it's a real usable cargo space, and the floor is almost flat with the seat backs folded down. Anyway, let's have a peek in the interior. That's one of the nicest parts of this car. Now, before I hop in, I want to show you some details of the interior, because these seats have a real nice color and fabric combination. So we have this caramel colored synthetic leather, and there is this micro suede material on the seat and the seat back. This is real nice to sit on because you don't slide over it. You really stay put when you sit on it, almost like you're sitting on Velcro. And we have the same material over here on the dashboard. I must say this caramel color really brightens up the interior. You have this nice red stitching. Yeah, all in all, this is a typical Mazda interior in the sense that it has a classic styling and a very classy look and feel to it. It has the typical Mazda physical gauges combined with a digital speedometer, which looks exactly like a traditional speedometer. I really like this classic layout, and I really find it sad to see that Mazda is going away from this, as you see in the Mazda CX-60 and CX-80, where they go to a full digital gauge cluster. Widescreen infotainment, and I stand corrected. Last time I said it was not a touchscreen, but someone pointed out that when the car is stationary and you want to enter a destination, it acts like a touchscreen, but now when I touch it, it doesn't respond. So this brings me immediately to the most cumbersome part of this infotainment screen, and that's entering an address. You have to use the rotary knob. It's a real great system, works real nice during driving, but when you have to enter a destination, this takes up a long time. So let's go back to the home screen. Another thing that I do like about this is basically the home screen, and when you push the home buttons a second time, the screen goes black and only shows the clock, and I think you can also completely switch it off. It's a real nice screen in the sense that it is small. I don't like screens all that much, but this isn't obstructing your view. From my sitting position, it's under the windscreen line, and it doesn't draw attention, and that speaks volumes for the user interfaces of Mazdas. They don't beep at you when they don't need to. They only communicate on a need-to-know basis. Important thing to know is that we have this button over here that's new for this model year, which shuts up all the beeps and bonks of the driver assist systems. As said, there aren't many, but the overspeed warning is super annoying. With one push of this button, warnings are silenced. There is one negative, and that has something to do with the lane departure warning, because if you want to switch off the lane departure warning, and that is a couple of layers deep, so you have to go into settings. This is something that I have to do every time I drive off, and I really wish Mazda would have clustered that in a separate button. Other than that, I don't have any complaints. You look at the interior, it's very nicely made, great materials, great fit and finish, real nice. They always stick to the physical buttons for the HVAC controls. There's a 2-zone climate control. This version you get heated seats, they are not ventilated. Over here is a wireless phone charger, and There is a little bit of shiny plastic on the center console, but it's not what they call piano black. This has, not sure if the camera picks it up, a little bit of a carbon weave onto there, but the areas that you don't touch have this glossy black finish. You don't get fingerprints on them real quick. And over here is the controller for the infotainment system. It has an auto hold, and it's real nice to have a physical push rotary button for the audio controls. Seating position is good. One thing that I really like, and that I noticed during driving, you have a very angled windscreen, so it comes in quite a bit. It's a day and night difference from the Suzuki Swift that I drove prior to this one. I can really watch along the A-pillar, so I have view into a corner. That's really nice. That's something I noticed. And also, the weather is nice, but it can be very cold at mornings, and it's so nice to have this vents over here alongside the steering column that are the first to blow warm air into the interior onto your lower body. Real comfy. Mazdas are exceptionally good cars for colder climates. Anyway, let's have a peek in the rear to see what the rear passenger space is like. Alright, ingress and egress is quite easy. I have a nice seating position. The seat is quite high up in relation to the floor, and in this trim level it's the Nagisa. You have the seat back completely clad in that synthetic leather, so Mazda didn't cheap out on that, and it really brightens up the interior for the rear passengers. The windows themselves are not that tall. Let me look the other direction, so they are not that tall. So it can be a bit dark in here, but luckily we have reading lights over here, if the camera wants to focus, and a bright ivory colored headliner. Now let's have a quick look around. There are fans for the rear passengers, but there are no chargers or USB outlets. We do have an armrest over here with 2 cup holders. We don't get heated seats in the rear. Ventilated seats aren't available in the CX-30, and that's not a big surprise, but seating comfort overall is good. I think for adult passengers, they can sit here for a couple of hours. This isn't a bad place to be. Now let's do the window test, because we need to. And view towards the outside is good. I think smaller children in child seats do have the issue that they are sitting quite deep in the car, and that their view towards the outside isn't great. But I think I covered the most important points of the interior. Let's go for a drive. So, first impressions on the Mazda CX-30 with a new 2.5 liter base engine. Well, in fact, my first impressions are basically the same as in the Mazda 3, and this entire driving segment I think will have the same conclusion as that test. Let me start off by the engine and transmission combination. I had exactly the same when I started driving in the Mazda 3. When I was driving and I wanted to accelerate a little bit like I do, I pushed the accelerator and I expected the transmission to downshift, and it doesn't do that. So I thought, this transmission is a bit old, it's a bit slow to respond. But you soon realize that it doesn't need to downshift, because the engine has so much torque in the lower rev range. So that makes this engine really smooth and effortless during driving, and it makes the driving experience pretty calming, I must admit. It's a real nice car for slow cruising and such. When you need to accelerate, just tickle the accelerator a little bit and the car comes to a smooth and linear acceleration. Hey there. You'll also notice that this car is very quiet, and coming out of the Suzuki Swift, it's day and night difference. Not only the entire interior, the quality of the materials, not to say that the Suzuki Swift was bad, but this is a whole different experience. You can tell that the car is super quiet. The car sits on, I believe these are Yokohama tires. I'll look it up and I'll blink it in screen later on. On this car, the tires are really quiet. There's very little road noise, very little wind noise. It's almost a Lexus-like experience. So that's something that Mazda has done really well. And that, combined with the smooth and effortless character of this engine, make this a real nice cruiser. Now, in comparison with the Mazda 3, with which it shares its platform, there are also differences. Of course, the center of gravity is a little higher, and you can notice that in cornering. Even at low speed corners, you can tell there is a little bit of body roll, but the car doesn't push too hard on the outside wheels. The car leans a little bit, but as soon as it starts leaning, it's settled, suspension is settled, and you have so much control over the car. And yeah, Mazda has this motto that they call Yinba Itai, so the unity of horse and rider, and that is also true for the CX-30. You always know what the car is doing, you feel very much in control. There's a nice amount of feedback in the steering wheel, in the suspension, and as I said, once you get used to the throttle response, you really feel like you're in complete control of the car. It's real engaging to drive too. Now, the big differences between the Mazda 3 and the CX-30 are that the feedback is a little bit more rounded off. The Mazda 3, in my opinion, is a little bit more dynamic, a bit more clear in its feedback, whereas in the CX-30 the response, especially the feedback in the steering wheel, is a bit more rounded off, making this overall a more comfortable car. So now we're on speed bump road and see how the suspension behaves. Let's carry a bit too much speed over the first speed bump, and you hear a little bit of a clunk. You really need to slow down a little bit. The suspension is noticeably more subtle than in the Mazda 3. There is more suspension travel, but the setup of the rear axle is really aimed at passengers and a little bit of cargo. So when you go over a speed bump as a single driver with a little bit too much of speed, the suspension, especially the spring setup, spring rates of the rear axle are a little bit too stiff. Now we give way to those two cars over here. Take it a bit more easy, see how it holds up, and now it's nice and balanced. Car, suspension travels in, travels out, and the car is immediately arrested. Now, the odd thing is that this car doesn't have lane keep assist or lane centering, or otherwise known as auto steer. That's something that's really nice to use in combination with the adaptive cruise control on highways. And oddly enough, this car does not have lane keep assist. So when I put on the the adaptive cruise control for the very first time, I expected the steering to go automatically. You have to keep your hands on the steering wheel. But this car doesn't have that, and I find that very odd, and I really miss that feature on this car. You would say all the hardware is there. We have the cameras that see the lane markings. There is the system that can steer for you, because it can steer you back when you cross the lanes on the lane departure. But all the hardware is there, but the center assist isn't there, which I think is very odd. So I looked into the brochure, and it is available in a driver assist package, and that also has the around view monitor, so extra cameras around the car for maneuvering. It has rear and front cross traffic alert and a lot of other things, and a function called the steer assist. So it is available as an option in a package, but that package is not available on the Nagisa trim level, at least not over here in the Netherlands, and I think that's a real miss. Okay folks, let's build up a bit more speed and enjoy ourselves over here, because as said, the engine is really happy in the lower rev range, plenty of torque, and you tickle the accelerator a little bit, the engine responds immediately, and the transmission doesn't downshift. But how is that when you want to go on a bit sportier ride, like I do right now? Well, the engine doesn't shy away from the high revs. In fact, it really likes living up in the high rev range. It has a nice tone to it. The engine has a nice tone, but also the engine noise insulation is real good in this car. But the car immediately senses that you want to go into a bit more sportier driving mode, so it keeps the revs up a little bit higher without flicking the car into sport mode. We have a sport mode selector over here, but I find that unnecessary to use, because I'm going a little bit sportier driving. It downshifts earlier and it upshifts later, and that's exactly what I want. So the car really senses the driver real well. and I think this car would be a whole lot of fun to drive on mountain roads, because as soon as you go out of your comfortable cruising drive mode, want to go in a little bit sportier drive mode, it immediately responds exactly the way that I want it to. So yeah, that tells me how good Mazda is at building driver-oriented cars. Alrighty, we're approaching the highway and we're taking the on-ramp, so I'm gonna floor it, see how the car performs, what the 140 horsepower will do to full acceleration. There we go. Didn't downshift, it's 3000 RPM. That's really where the engine comes to life. 2,500, 3,000 RPM, and it really winds it out 5,000 RPM. There's 130 kilometers per hour. I'm gonna slow down a bit, otherwise I can't merge over here. But that shows you how much this engine likes to rev. It doesn't shy away from the high revs, as I said. But what I wanted to say, there's very little wind noise. It's a quiet car, as I pointed out. This goes to show this is driving at highway speed. The suspension is really comfy. The car rocks up and down a little bit. It's a real nice highway cruiser. So if you have a smaller family or a family with smaller kids, and you're looking for a car with plenty of cargo capacity, practicality, but it's also suitable for highway driving, the CX-30 does a real good job at that. So those are all my talking points for the drive segment. Let's head out to the middle of nowhere, where I'll give my final thoughts on the CX-30 with the new 2.5 liter base engine. See you in a second. There is one thing that I forgot to mention in the drive segment, and that's the fuel consumption. After a week of driving this car, my average fuel consumption is 6.5 liters per 100 kilometers. And when I try to squeeze out the most of the mileage, I get up to 6 liters per 100 kilometers, but that means I really have to go hypermiling in this car. Anyway, it's very good fuel consumption number, I think, for a mild hybrid, a car this size and this level of performance. And speaking of performance, I still think that this engine puts out more than the advertised 140 horsepower. In comparison with the Mazda 3, the CX-30 is a more comfortable car to drive, but still very engaging like all other Mazdas. And what speaks volumes for this car is the ease that inexperienced drivers can handle this car. I said it's a quite engaging car to drive, but it's very easy and simple to use. Yesterday my wife drove the car. She doesn't like driving test cars, especially not all the modern safety features, but when we switched those off, she drove with great confidence in this car. She usually is a bit insecure, and in this car she immediately started driving in a very calm and relaxed mode. As I pointed out, I think there are two negatives with this car, and the one is that it doesn't have the lane keep assist as standard. As said, all the hardware is in the car, make that standard Mazda, and please find a way to switch off the lane departure warning with a single push of the button, because every time now I have to go through the menu settings, it's a little bit cumbersome. Anyway, it's a very nice car to drive, and I'm really curious to hear, by the way, what you think of this color option. This is Mazda's new color. It's called Circon Sand, and they roll it out over the entire model range of the car. In direct sunlight you can see it has a very fine metallic structure to it, but in more overcast day and lower daylight you see a lot of depth in this car. And the opinions seem to be very divided on this color option, so I'm really curious to hear what you think. Anyway, that's it for this real-life car review. I do hope you liked following me along, and if you did, please let me know by giving me a like, subscribing to my channel, and if you have any questions or constructive feedback, let me know down below in the comment section. Also, if you want to help out support the channel, you can do so by buying me a coffee. For that, I'll leave the link in the description box down below. That's it for now. Thanks for watching. See you on the next one. Bye!